Alcohol's story didn't begin with Friday night parties or champagne toasts. Its roots stretch far deeper, into a time when it wasn't a casual beverage but a spiritual tool, a force to be wielded carefully, almost fearfully. Imagine stepping back thousands of years, into temples heavy with incense, where priests and mystics treated certain substances as keys to other realms. Alcohol, in its earliest forms, wasn't for recreation. It was for transformation. It was seen as a liquid fire, a distilled essence that could loosen the soul's grip on the body, allowing visions, insights, and contact with the divine. The word alcohol itself hints at this history. It comes from the Arabic alcohol, originally referring to a fine, dark powder used for cosmetic and medicinal purposes. But in alchemical traditions, alcohol also meant the spirit extracted from matter, the pure essence pulled from a base substance through distillation. To ancient alchemists, distillation wasn't just chemistry. It was a mystical act, the process of drawing out the soul. When they spoke of spirits, they meant it literally, the life essence of a plant or grain, concentrated into a form that could open doors, sometimes beautiful doors, sometimes dangerous ones. This is why alcohol came to be called a spirit in the first place. It wasn't a marketing term or a clever metaphor. It was a recognition of its potency, its ability to alter not just perception, but energy, to shift the very frequency of a person. In the hands of a mystic or healer, this power might have been used intentionally as part of sacred rites. But they always knew it was a double-edged sword. The same liquid that could bring visions could also bring chaos if misused. It wasn't a casual thing to sip on a whim. It was a tool for those prepared to face whatever it revealed. Fast forward to today, and that reverence is gone. Alcohol is everywhere. It's marketed as fun, as sophisticated, as the key to confidence and connection. We raise our glasses without a second thought, never questioning why this particular substance is so woven into every celebration, every ritual of adulthood. But the core nature of alcohol hasn't changed. What's changed is our understanding of it, or rather, our lack of understanding. The ancient caution has been replaced by cultural programming, telling us it's harmless, even essential, to social life. Yet if we peel back the history, the truth is more complicated. From Sumerian wine offerings to Egyptian rituals linked to Osiris, god of death and rebirth, alcohol was always associated with crossing thresholds. The Greeks gave it to Dionysus, the god of divine madness and ecstasy. These deities weren't just about pleasure. They were about the extremes of existence, the moments when you slip out of ordinary reality into something altered, something bigger, or something darker. Alcohol was a tool to step out of the mundane. But tools can cut both ways. The very thing that can open your mind can also cloud it, break it, or lead it astray. The ancients knew this. They treated alcohol as both sacred and dangerous. A sip could open your intuition. A gulp could sever your connection to clarity. It was a tightrope walk, a balancing act, and it was never meant to be part of daily life. Now, we drink casually, thoughtlessly. It's at weddings, funerals, birthdays, work parties, everywhere. We've normalized something that was once approached with deep caution. We've forgotten its history, and in doing so, we've made ourselves vulnerable. The truth is, alcohol doesn't just impact the body. It impacts your energy field, your inner compass. It doesn't just cause hangovers. It disrupts the subtle systems of intuition and presence that guide your life. The ancients believed that alcohol could temporarily separate the soul from the body. Think about that. If even a fraction of that is true, what happens when we drink not with intention, but as an escape? What doors are we opening? And do we even know what's stepping through them? In modern culture, we rarely ask these questions. We're too busy following the script. Drink to relax. Drink to connect. Drink to celebrate. It feels normal, even necessary. But that's because we've been taught to think of alcohol as a harmless enhancer rather than what it really is, a disruptor of spiritual clarity. Every time you take a drink, something subtle shifts. Your energy softens. Your intuition dims. The voice inside you that says, "Hey, maybe this isn't who I am, gets quieter. And over time, that silence becomes normal. You start to believe the version of you that exists under the influence is the real you. But it's not. It's a mask, a temporary distortion of the frequency you naturally carry. If we looked at alcohol with the same honesty as the mystics once did, we might see it differently. We might see that it's not just a drink, but a contract. You take it into your body, and in return, you give up a little piece of your awareness, a little piece of your sovereignty. You agree, if only for a few hours, to be less present, less connected. And the more you make that trade, the more it becomes your baseline. That's how it keeps you hooked, not just physically, but energetically. It convinces you that you need it to access joy or confidence, when in reality, it's numbing you from the source of those things. Alcohol's journey from sacred substance to everyday beverage isn't just about changing times. It's about a shift in consciousness. We've lost the understanding that some things are powerful not because they're fun, but because they can transform or destroy depending on how they're used. We've turned a sacred fire into a party trick, and we pay for it every time we wake up feeling foggy, disconnected, unsure of who we were the night before. But what if we remembered? What if we looked at alcohol not through the lens of culture, but through the lens of energy? We might start to see that the hangover isn't the real price. The real price is the dimming of the light inside you, the slow erosion of the clarity that makes life meaningful. That's where the real danger lies. And that's why this conversation matters. Not to demonize alcohol, but to see it for what it is. A tool, a weapon, a mirror. And it's up to us to decide how, or if, we use it. Alcohol doesn't just cloud your thoughts. It leaves an imprint far beyond the physical. Imagine your energy field, what some traditions call the aura, as a protective shield, a vibrant and constantly shifting web of light. It's the unseen part of you that holds your intuition, your sense of purpose, and your ability to stay grounded in your own truth. This field is like your spiritual immune system, filtering out what doesn't belong, guiding you toward alignment. But when alcohol enters the picture, that shield weakens. It's not a metaphor. It's a shift that happens on a level you can feel even if you can't see it. Think about the last time you woke up after a heavy night of drinking. Maybe your head hurt, your body ached, but beyond that, didn't you feel a little off? Not just physically, but spiritually? Like your clarity was gone, like a part of you had stepped away. That's because alcohol doesn't just affect your body's chemistry. It alters your frequency. It creates tiny fractures in the field around you, small tears that allow energies to slip in. These energies aren't always obvious. Sometimes they show up as intrusive thoughts or heavy emotions that don't even feel like your own. Other times, they appear as subtle patterns, sudden waves of anxiety, emotional exhaustion, or a creeping sense of disconnection. Every major spiritual tradition warns about substances that lower your vibration, and alcohol is almost always at the top of that list. In esoteric systems, it's understood that your root chakra, your energy center tied to survival and pleasure, gets overstimulated when you drink. That's why you might feel more impulsive, more in the body, chasing sensations. At the same time, your crown chakra, your connection to higher consciousness, dulls. You lose access to that inner voice, that intuitive knowing. The trade-off is clear. You feel more alive in one way, but more disconnected in another. You laugh, you feel free, but on a deeper level, you've stepped out of alignment. This shift might seem temporary, but it adds up. Over time, repeated drinking teaches your body and energy field to normalize the disconnect. You start relying on alcohol to feel confident or creative, but that's the trap. Alcohol doesn't create those states. It only numbs the mental noise long enough for you to touch what's already inside you. Then it muddies your energy so much that the next time, you need it again to feel that same spark. It's a cycle of suppression, not true expression. And here's the part few people talk about. Alcohol can open doors that you don't know how to close. Think of it like leaving your front door wide open in a storm. You might not notice who or what drifts in, but something does. In spiritual circles, This is called energetic intrusion. Some traditions describe them as entities, others as parasitic thought forms. The names vary, but the principle is the same. When your aura is strong, you're protected. When it's weakened by alcohol or any substance that lowers your vibration, you become vulnerable to external energies. These forces don't have to be sinister to affect you. Even leftover emotional debris from people around you can stick to your field, weighing you down without you realizing it. Have you ever noticed how, after drinking, it's easier to pick up on the moods of others or to feel drained after a social event? That's not just because your social battery is low. It's because your energetic boundaries are down. Alcohol blurs those lines, making you more open, but not in a healing way. It's a raw openness, one that leaves you exposed to whatever frequencies are in the room. That's why people can wake up after a night of drinking feeling heavy, anxious, or emotionally scattered. It's not just the hangover. It's the residue of what slipped into their field while they weren't fully present. The phenomenon of blackout drunkenness offers a haunting glimpse of this. When someone reaches a point where they don't remember what happened, it's not just a biological failure of memory. Spiritually, it's like the soul has stepped back. The body is moving, speaking, acting, but the conscious self, the higher self, is gone. What fills that void? In some traditions, this state is described as a kind of possession, not in the Hollywood sense, but in the sense that the person's energy is so disconnected that anything can take the wheel. That's why so many stories of violence or reckless behavior involve alcohol. The person isn't fully there. Something else is driving. This isn't meant to scare you, but to make you aware. Awareness is the first defense. When you understand how alcohol affects your energy, you start to see the patterns. You notice how your intuition is quieter after drinking, how meditation feels harder, how creative flow takes longer to return. It's like static in the background of your life, and the more you drink, the louder that static gets. But it's not just spiritual. The emotional and mental consequences are equally real. Alcohol suppresses the nervous system's ability to regulate itself. It numbs anxiety for a few hours, sure, but when it wears off, your nervous system rebounds harder. That's why the day after drinking can feel like a crash, not just physically, but emotionally. It's a cycle of artificial highs followed by deep lows, and each time, your baseline gets a little more unstable. Most people don't notice because they're taught to believe it's normal. It's just the hangover, they say. But what if that hangover is your energy trying to reset itself? What if the heaviness you feel is the weight of all the openings that were created while your field was weakened? If you've ever felt like you've lost a piece of yourself after drinking, you're not imagining it. On some level, you did. But that piece isn't gone forever. It's just waiting for you to come back, to strengthen your field, to rebuild what's been cracked. The good news is that awareness changes everything. Once you see alcohol for what it does, not just to your body, but to your energy, you can start reclaiming your sovereignty. You can choose to protect your field, to guard your intuition, to keep your frequency steady. And when you do, life feels different. Clearer, lighter, more aligned. You start realizing that the moments of confidence or joy you thought alcohol gave you were always within you. You just needed to stop numbing them long enough to feel them fully. So the next time you consider taking that drink, ask yourself, what am I really trading? Is it worth dimming my light for a few hours of false connection? Is it worth opening doors I don't know how to close? You might find that the answer is no. Not because you're forcing yourself to say no, but because you've started to feel the power of staying fully present, fully awake, fully you. That's the kind of clarity alcohol can never give. And that's the clarity worth protecting. From the moment you're born, the world starts programming you to believe that alcohol is not only normal, but necessary. It's not a conscious conspiracy, it's culture. It's the way every commercial, movie, and celebration subtly teaches you that a drink in your hand equals connection, confidence, and fun. You don't question it because no one around you is questioning it either. It's woven into everything. Think about it. Birthdays, weddings, holidays, even funerals. The toast, the glass of wine, the champagne, all of it feels so ordinary that to reject it is to stand out, to risk being the weird one. But what if that's by design? Alcohol is one of the most heavily marketed substances on the planet. Entire industries are built around making you believe you're incomplete without it. Look at how commercials are framed. You don't see people drinking alone in their apartment, spiraling into numbness. You see groups of beautiful, confident people laughing under twinkling lights, as if the drink is the source of their joy. You see the guy at the bar who suddenly becomes smooth and charismatic after whiskey. You see the celebration scenes where champagne showers symbolize success and happiness. It's a narrative carefully constructed to connect alcohol with the very emotions you're naturally wired to seek: belonging, joy, freedom. By the time you're old enough to have your first sip, the idea that alcohol equals adulthood is already planted deep in your subconscious. Maybe you grew up watching family members raise glasses at dinner while the kids were given juice. Maybe your favorite TV characters unwound after work with a glass of wine or cracked open beers at backyard barbecues. These images become the backdrop of your understanding of life. They're not presented as choices. They're presented as what's normal, what's expected. And when you finally join in, it feels like a rite of passage. It feels like you're stepping into the adult world, like you're doing something significant. The problem is this conditioning runs so deep that not drinking feels like rebellion, like you're opting out of something fundamental. You might even feel guilty or left out for saying no. This isn't because alcohol is inherently meaningful. It's because we've been programmed to believe it is. The genius of this programming is that it doesn't just sell you a product. It sells you an identity. You're not just drinking. You're part of the group. You're celebrating. You're fun. The glass becomes a prop in your social performance. Without it, you might feel exposed, like people are silently questioning you. Why aren't you drinking? Are you too serious? Too uptight? The irony is that the people asking those questions are often just as trapped in the script. They don't even realize they're not choosing freely. They're acting out the same cultural conditioning you are. Here's the truth most people avoid. Alcohol doesn't create connection. It just lowers the barriers that stop you from pretending to connect. It makes you feel less self-conscious, sure, but it's not building real intimacy. It's numbing your fear of rejection long enough for you to perform. But when the buzz wears off, you're left with the same doubts, the same walls, the same sense of separation. And because you don't realize that the connection you felt was artificial, you reach for the drink again to get it back. It's a loop, a cycle of chasing something that was never real in the first place. Culturally, we've turned alcohol into a shortcut to emotions we're scared to access on our own. Joy, confidence, relaxation, all of these are natural states, but we've been taught to outsource them. We've forgotten how to sit with discomfort, how to let emotions move through us without numbing them. Our society labels vulnerability as weakness, and alcohol steps in with a solution. Feeling anxious at a party? Have a drink. Nervous about a date? Have a drink. Want to feel bold and carefree? Just drink. It's marketed as freedom, but what it really does is condition you to believe that you can't access your authentic self without it. What makes this even more powerful is how socially acceptable it all is. Nobody questions a drink in your hand. But if you choose not to drink, suddenly you're the one who has to explain yourself. That's the brilliance of the system. It flips the script. Instead of questioning why we need alcohol to have fun, we question why someone would want to have fun without it. It's peer pressure wrapped in cultural tradition, and most people never see it for what it is. The industry thrives on this. They don't just sell you alcohol. They sell you a lifestyle, a sense of belonging, a shortcut to confidence. And they do it with precision. Every ad, every sponsorship, every product placement is designed to link alcohol with positive emotions and memorable experiences. It's not an accident that beer commercials are filled with images of friends around a campfire, or that wine ads focus on luxury, elegance, and romance. These are emotional triggers, carefully crafted to make you associate alcohol with happiness and connection. And here's the darker side. The more you buy into this, the more you start to depend on alcohol for those feelings. You start to believe that you need it to relax, to celebrate, to be you. You forget that the version of you who's funny and confident doesn't come from the drink. It comes from you. Alcohol just temporarily quiets the self-doubt long enough for that version to peek through. But instead of learning to access it on your own, you start to rely on the drink as the key. That's how the cycle of dependence starts. Not necessarily addiction in the physical sense, but a dependence on alcohol to feel whole. The truth is, the programming is generational. Your parents were taught the same script. So are their parents. It's passed down not because it's true, but because it's familiar. We inherit these rituals without questioning them. We see people we love, people we trust, using alcohol to cope, to celebrate, to connect, and we assume it's just the way life works. But what if it's not? What if all of this is a distraction from something deeper? Our discomfort with being fully present, fully human, without numbing the rough edges. Breaking free from this conditioning isn't easy. It's not just about saying no to a drink. It's about saying no to an entire narrative, a belief system that's been embedded in your psyche since childhood. It's about questioning why we equate fun with intoxication, why we confuse courage with lowered inhibition, why we think we need to alter ourselves to be accepted. The kind of questioning feels uncomfortable because it goes against the grain. But that's where freedom begins, on the other side of questioning. What if the very thing you've been using to feel more alive is actually keeping you from it? What if all those moments where you let loose under the influence weren't glimpses of your real self, but distractions from it? The truth is, alcohol doesn't bring you closer to who you are. It blurs the parts of you that are scared to show up fully. It gives you a fake sense of courage, a temporary ticket to freedom. But that freedom fades. And when it does, you're left with the same walls, the same fears, sometimes even stronger than before. The choice to step outside this conditioning isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about remembering that you were born whole, without the need for a glass in your hand to validate your existence. The confidence, the connection, the joy you think alcohol gives you, they're already inside you. The real challenge is learning to access them without the crutch. And when you do, you'll find that what you were chasing in a bottle was never alcohol. It was yourself. For as long as humans have sought the meaning of life, spiritual traditions across the globe have warned about intoxicants, and alcohol has been at the center of those warnings. These aren't just moral rules or arbitrary prohibitions. They come from a deep understanding of how substances like alcohol interfere with clarity, awareness, and spiritual connection. Ancient wisdom recognized that the mind, body, and spirit are deeply intertwined, and anything that clouds one will inevitably cloud the others. Take the Bhagavad Gita, for example. This foundational Hindu text teaches that spiritual growth depends on cultivating sattva, the energy of harmony, balance, and light. Sattva represents the qualities of clarity and purity that elevate your consciousness and bring you closer to truth. But alcohol, with its destabilizing effects, falls under tamas, the energy of inertia, darkness, and confusion. In other words, it doesn't lift you up, it pulls you down into a state of heaviness and disconnection. You might feel temporarily free when you drink, but spiritually, you're moving away from the state of awareness that leads to real liberation. Buddhism takes this even further. The Buddha specifically warned against intoxicants, not because he was trying to police pleasure, but because they undermine mindfulness, the very foundation of the spiritual path. The Eightfold Path, which guides followers toward enlightenment, is built on principles like right intention, right action, and right mindfulness. Alcohol disrupts all three. It clouds judgment, stirs impulsive behavior, and makes it nearly impossible to stay aware of your thoughts and actions in the present moment. In Buddhist teachings, intoxication isn't just about drunkenness. It's about anything that dulls your awareness. And awareness is everything. Without it, suffering multiplies. The Taoist tradition also speaks of balance and alignment, of flowing with the Tao, the natural rhythm of the universe. To live in harmony with the Tao requires stillness and presence, a kind of internal quiet that allows you to move gracefully through life. Alcohol disrupts this balance. It creates artificial highs and emotional swings that throw you off center. It might feel like fun in the moment, but it pulls you away from the subtle flow that leads to true contentment. The Tao doesn't scream at you. It whispers. And if your mind is foggy or your energy is scattered, you miss it. Christianity, too, has its warnings. While wine is used symbolically in many rituals, the deeper teachings caution against drunkenness because of the way it severs the connection between soul and spirit. St. Augustine described intoxication as a form of self-abandonment, a surrender not to God, but to escapism. When you're drunk, you're not present enough to listen to divine guidance, to hear the quiet voice of your own conscience. The Bible's call to be sober-minded isn't just about physical sobriety. It's about spiritual vigilance, about staying awake in a world that constantly tries to lull you to sleep. Islam, perhaps more than any other tradition, is unambiguous on the topic. Alcohol is haram, prohibited, not because of moral superiority, but because of the chaos it creates within the soul. In Islamic mysticism, the body is viewed as a sacred trust, a vessel for the divine. To intoxicate, it is to cloud that trust, to interfere with the clarity needed to walk a righteous path. It's not about shame or fear. It's about recognizing that anything that blurs your connection to the divine is a barrier to spiritual growth. Even the esoteric traditions of the West, such as Hermeticism and alchemy, acknowledge the dual nature of alcohol. On one hand, it's revered as a solvent, a tool for extracting essence and purifying matter. On the other, it's feared for its ability to dissolve clarity and distort perception. The alchemists believed that every substance had both a light side and a shadow side. Alcohol could be used as a spiritual catalyst, but only with deep intention and respect. Used carelessly, it became a trap, a quick path to confusion rather than enlightenment. Somewhere along the way, modern culture lost this understanding. We cherry-picked the symbols: wine at the altar, champagne at weddings, the ecstatic celebrations of Dionysus, but we discarded the wisdom that went with them. We kept the rituals, but stripped them of meaning. Alcohol, which was once treated as a sacred and powerful tool, is now just another form of entertainment. We've turned a doorway to transformation into a commodity, and we call it fun. But fun isn't the same as freedom. And when you look at these ancient teachings, the message is clear. Alcohol dims your light. It muddies the waters of perception. It makes it harder to discern truth from illusion. And if you can't tell what's real, how can you ever truly wake up? Every tradition, whether Eastern or Western, speaks of clarity as the key to spiritual evolution. Clarity is what allows you to see yourself honestly, to align with your higher purpose, to recognize the divine within and around you. Alcohol steals that clarity, even if only for a night. And the more you drink, the more you lose touch with it. This isn't about perfection or strict rules. It's about resonance. It's about noticing how your energy feels when you're clear versus when you're clouded. Think about it. Have you ever tried meditating the morning after drinking? The mind feels heavy, restless. Your focus scatters. It's not because meditation suddenly got harder. It's because your frequency is off. Alcohol lowers it, and spiritual practices are all about raising it. The two don't mix. If you're on a spiritual path, this is where the rubber meets the road. You can't walk toward awakening with one foot in the fog. Every time you drink, you take a step back from your own awareness. And over time, that gap grows. You might start noticing that your dreams are hazier, your intuition feels weaker, or your ability to connect with something greater than yourself feels out of reach. This isn't a coincidence. It's the natural result of trading clarity for temporary relief. And the relief alcohol gives is always temporary. That's why spiritual teachers across centuries have emphasized presence as the true source of peace. Presence doesn't need to be manufactured. It doesn't come from a bottle or a buzz. It comes from learning to sit with whatever arises, joy, fear, sadness, without running from it. Alcohol teaches you to run, to numb, to avoid. And the more you run, the further you get from the truth you're seeking. The teachings are there if you look for them. They've always been there. The Sufi poets wrote about intoxication, but they weren't talking about wine. They were talking about the ecstasy of divine connection, a state far more intoxicating than anything you could pour in a glass. The mystics knew that real freedom doesn't come from escaping your mind, but from transcending it. And alcohol doesn't transcend anything. It just dulls the edges, creating the illusion of peace while burying the very feelings that need to be understood. What all these traditions remind us is that clarity is sacred. It's not just a nice idea. It's the foundation of spiritual growth. And every time you choose to stay clear-headed when the world around you is numbing out, you take a stand, not for morality, but for your own awakening. You're saying, I value my connection to truth more than the quick escape. And that choice, repeated over time, changes everything. The question is, can you make that choice in a culture that glorifies the opposite? Can you be the one who says no to the script, who refuses to trade awareness for a buzz? Because that's where real strength lies, not in following the crowd, but in listening to the quiet voice of your own soul, the one that says, stay awake. The world doesn't need more intoxicated people. It needs more people who are fully present, fully alive, fully clear. That's the path these ancient teachings were pointing toward all along. Healing from the grip of alcohol doesn't start with willpower or self-punishment. It starts with remembering who you were before you were taught to numb yourself. Beneath all the habits and cultural scripts, you are already whole. The version of you that feels free, confident, and deeply connected isn't hiding at the bottom of a bottle. It's buried under the noise, under the fear, under the belief that you need something external to unlock it. The path back to clarity is about peeling those layers away, one choice at a time. The first step is presence. True presence is terrifying at first because it asks you to sit with what alcohol has been silencing. Your discomfort, your anxieties, the parts of you you've been taught to avoid. But presence is also healing. When you stop running, when you allow yourself to feel what you've been numbing, you realize that those feelings don't have the power you thought they did. They rise, they pass, and in their wake, you find something deeper: peace, resilience, self-trust. Alcohol interrupts that process. It freezes you in avoidance. But once you choose presence, the thaw begins. Breath work is one of the simplest ways to reconnect with this presence. When you consciously breathe, slow, deep, intentional breaths, you shift your body out of survival mode. You tell your nervous system, I'm safe. I'm here. I don't need to escape. This single act can be more transformative than any drink. It grounds you. It sharpens your mind. It helps you feel your energy field stabilizing. Over time, breath work becomes a way to access the very calm and clarity that alcohol pretends to give, but without the crash. Meditation is another powerful ally. Not the stiff, perfect kind you might picture, but the kind that simply invites you to sit with yourself as you are. Even 5 minutes a day can begin to rebuild the connection alcohol eroded. At first, your mind will rebel. It will flood you with restlessness, old thoughts, random noise. That's normal. That's what's been sitting beneath the surface all along. But as you keep showing up, you start to see that you are not those thoughts. You're the awareness underneath them. This awareness is the you that alcohol has been muting, the you that doesn't need anything to feel whole. Energy healing practices like Reiki or sound therapy can also accelerate this repair. They work on the subtle layers, your aura, your frequency, that alcohol tends to disturb. These practices close the tiny fractures, the openings that drinking creates in your energetic field. You might not see this happening, but you'll feel it. You'll notice a sense of lightness returning, a feeling of being collected rather than scattered. Your intuition, which may have felt dulled, starts to sharpen. Your dreams become more vivid. You begin to trust yourself again. Yoga can also help, not just because it strengthens the body, but because it integrates body, breath, and mind. When you move through a pose with awareness, you reconnect with the parts of you that alcohol disconnects. Each stretch, each mindful transition says, I'm here. I'm whole. I don't need to escape. Over time, yoga builds a kind of inner strength that doesn't crumble under stress. It teaches you to face discomfort instead of running from it, something alcohol never teaches you to do. Nature is one of the most underrated healers on this journey. There's a reason you feel better after a walk in the woods or time by the ocean. The earth has its own frequency, steady, grounding, and pure. When you immerse yourself in it, your own energy field starts to recalibrate. You remember what stillness feels like. You remember that joy doesn't come from a drink or a party. It comes from simply being alive, for being present enough to notice the wind on your face or the sound of waves. These moments of connection are the real celebrations, the ones that don't vanish with a hangover. Another essential tool is intention. Healing isn't about forcing yourself to stop drinking or shaming yourself for the past. It's about setting an intention to live in alignment with who you really are. When you set a clear intention, like, I choose clarity or I honor my energy, everything in your life starts to shift around that choice. You begin to notice opportunities for growth, relationships that support your path, and insights that guide you forward. Intention is like a magnet. It draws to you the experiences that match the energy you're cultivating. The beauty of this journey is that you don't have to reject your past to heal. Alcohol may have played a role in your story, but it doesn't define you. In a way, it has been a teacher, a harsh one perhaps, but a teacher nonetheless. It showed you where you were hurting, where you didn't trust yourself, where you were disconnected. Now, you get to take that awareness and choose differently. You don't have to regret the nights you spent drinking. You only have to stop repeating them. As you step into clarity, something remarkable happens. Your creativity begins to flow again. Not the chaotic kind that comes from being loose, but the deep, steady kind that comes from alignment. You find that laughter feels richer, connection feels realer, emotions feel fuller, because you're experiencing them in their true form, without a filter. You discover that you can walk into a room and feel confident, not because you're intoxicated, but because you're fully present. That's real confidence, the kind that doesn't vanish when the buzz wears off. The longer you walk this path, the less you crave alcohol. Not because you're forcing yourself to abstain, but because you simply outgrow it. It no longer matches your frequency. It no longer offers anything you can't already give yourself. The idea of needing a drink to relax or have fun starts to feel absurd, like an outdated belief you've finally seen through. You begin to realize that true freedom isn't about escaping your mind. It's about mastering it. It's about being able to feel everything, joy, sadness, fear, without being controlled by it. And the best part? You start to remember everything. The conversations, the moments, the insights, you carry them with you, fully awake. There's no fog, no regret, no wondering what you said or did. Just you, living fully, rooted in the present. That's the freedom alcohol pretends to give, but never does. The path back to clarity isn't about becoming boring or rigid. It's about becoming sovereign. You still celebrate. You still connect. You still create memories. But now they're real. They're yours. They last because they come from a place of authenticity, not intoxication. And as you deepen into this way of living, you realize that what you were chasing in alcohol, freedom, connection, confidence, was never in the drink. It was always in you. So, if you're ready to remember who you really are, start by listening. Listen to the quiet voice inside that says, there's more to me than this. Listen to the signals your body gives you. Listen to the energy shifts that happen when you stay clear. This journey isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about choosing, moment by moment, to stay awake, to stay aligned, to stay real. You've made it this far because something inside you is ready to see alcohol for what it really is: a mask, a distraction, a trickster that pretends to give you what you already have. This isn't about shame or judgment. It's about clarity. It's about remembering that you were never broken, never lacking, never in need of a drink to feel whole. You were taught to believe that alcohol is the key to confidence, to joy, to connection. But now you know the truth. Those qualities are not in a glass. They're in you. The real challenge isn't just to quit drinking. It's to reclaim the parts of yourself you gave away along the way. The courage you thought alcohol gave you is actually your own courage. waiting for you to call it back. The joy you thought only came with a buzz is your own joy, waiting for you to experience it without filters. And the connection you've been seeking has never depended on a substance. It's always been about presence, about showing up fully without needing to numb or escape. This journey isn't easy. It asks you to face discomfort, to sit with emotions you've been taught to avoid. But that's where the magic happens. That's where you start to remember your true self, the self that doesn't need to be altered, the self that is already enough. And once you experience that kind of freedom, there's no going back. You won't miss the false highs because you'll be living in a state of deeper, steadier alignment. If these words resonate, take them as a sign that you're ready to step into your clarity, your power, your truth. The world needs more of you, fully awake, fully alive, fully you.